One thing that's talked about in our bank, and it was first mentioned by my father, our CEO and chairman, Mick Guttau, he said, when you drink from the well, remember the well digger. And that means a lot to me because of the bank that I work for. It's a family-owned bank. My grandfather and my father were first owners of it 30-some years ago, and I've been the beneficiary of taking on the presidency for that bank and hopefully guiding it into the next few decades. That saying that he mentions about remember the well digger, that statement speaks because this financial literacy program is probably only possible for us because of some conversations and some actions that took place in my father's life many years ago. There was one story that kind of encapsulates the financial literacy within our family that's been passed down from generation to generation. It was when my father was in high school, maybe slightly younger than that, and he and my grandfather were out in the cattle barn scooping manure and cleaning it out. And my dad was maybe somewhat complaining because he had a friend and their family were farmers also, and they farmed about the same amount of acres as my grandfather farmed. And my dad was complaining because they had a really nice car, had nicer equipment, it just seemed like they had a nicer lifestyle. And my grandfather went on to explain to him that, well, our family is buying our family ground, and so we have debt and we're having to make those interest payments and principal payments, while the friend's family was only renting family ground, or farm ground, excuse me. And so there was a different level of lifestyle at that time. And then my grandfather followed that up with, I think my father was called Mickey at the time. He goes, "Mickey, someday you will come to appreciate this." What's ironic is within 10 years, that family farm that had been paid for by my grandfather's hard work was what was put up as collateral for my father and grandfather to buy the bank, TS Bank, as it is today, in the late 1970s. And without that family farm ground being bought and good financial literacy behind that business, we would not be sitting here today doing what we're doing and having Bob Mantell in the TS Bank Institute and trying to create an institute that can spread this financial literacy movement across the local county, Southwest Iowa, and hopefully the state and maybe even the nation someday. In 1978, my father had the privilege of buying this bank at the age of 31. In the story, you know, it was the family farm ground that was put up as collateral to do that. And from there, the bank has expanded, and we are where we're at today because of many well diggers. And I appreciate that, and what I'm wanting to do is someday be looked at alongside each of you in the classroom as a well digger. And hopefully there's some students that come away from their educational experience that can remember what we have done for them and their financial future. So where did this financial literacy project begin? In 2008, I believe it was in December of 2008, myself and my mother and father were sitting in a meeting, and we were discussing some of our charitable giving projects that we were supporting. And at the time I was on the school board at Trainer, and the financial crisis was in full swing. And I remember that there was days and weeks that, you know, you weren't sure whether the United States financial system was actually going to survive. At that time, I made the comment, everybody believes this is an economic crisis or a housing crisis. But I said, I don't think those are the roots. The root of this is the lack of financial literacy crisis. And that's from business people to consumers to congressmen, and in general, across America, it's become a crisis because we're not teaching, whether that's at home or in the school, financial skills and the financial literacy that needs to be. So at that time, we went to the Trainer School District and talked to the administration and said we would like to fund a 5-year project to put in place financial literacy. And from there, meetings occurred and brainstorming, and what came out of that was hiring a full-time person to be in the school as the director of financial literacy. And so the bank put the money up to do that, and it's only been 3 years now. With that, we would like to hire more staff and put those staff members into designated schools, giving us a few more years of trial and error and learning, and also obviously teaching students about financial management and being more responsible when it comes to the financial endeavors of their future. About that same time that we had that meeting, the financial crisis, like I said, was occurring, and because of how we had positioned the bank, we were able to take advantage of that crisis and improve profits. It helped that we're in a very conservative, stable area in the Midwest, and from there, our profits have increased. And in 2007, we actually were not making any money. So less than 2 years before that, we were not making money as we had expanded into the Council Bluffs area and expanded the trust department and many other facets of our business. And at that time, my mother and father, Mick and Judy Guttau, I took them to lunch and I said, you know, today when we're not making money, and at the time I knew that we were right on the verge of hitting break even and then beginning to grow and profit from there, I said we need to make a decision now, because this will be a much easier decision than in the future when we're hopefully making more money. I said, how much are we going to give back to the community? How much are we going to give to charity? How much are we going to invest in economic development? I said, let's pull out napkins here and write down what you think. And I didn't know if that was a percentage or a dollar amount or what they were going to write. And I said, and then we'll flip them over and decide. And so we write down, and didn't take too long, and we start turning them over, and my father, 10%, my mother, 10%. And I said, well, that's what I happen to have written on my napkin is 10%. And basically what it came down to was we committed to giving 10% of our net income before tax, or profit before tax, out to charity and to community things such as this financial literacy program. So at the time that we had that meeting in 2008, we knew that we were on the verge of a large amount of money that would be able to be set aside. In talking about the bank committing 10% of their profits back to the community, I've had discussions with people and they say, man, that can be a big number. And many employees are like, why would you do that? And what's interesting is I tell them, you know, most people look at that as an output. But I said it's the biggest input that we've had in our success over the last few years. In 2009, we were named the highest performing bank in the country. In 2010, and I believe 2011 will play out the same, we were the highest performing bank in the state of Iowa. And it's given me a great opportunity to share this story about the bank's commitment of their profits back to the community. And during that time, you know, I would tell them, you know, it's not just an output, it's an input. And what I mean by that is when you understand how money flows. And what's interesting is talking about money flowing, you know, we call money currency. Water current, electric current, it's a currency. Money is meant to flow. And when you begin to understand finance and understand that it's meant to flow, you realize that you should just be managing it and directing it, not grabbing it, not holding it, and not doing something irresponsible with it. It's much like a water dam. If you put up a dam and the water's going to stop flowing and disaster begins to occur. But if you open up that dam and you allow it to flow and you manage the way it flows, many great things can happen and prosperity can come from that water usage. The same is with electricity as well, much like water. But when it comes to the money, you know, one gentleman told me one time, he goes, if he cannot get it through you, he will not get it to you. And that came from my pastor, who's a very financial literate person as well. And he basically was saying that if you go to grab your money and you don't do things with it in an appropriate fashion, you will not have as much as you could have in the future. Stewardship, and that's really what we're talking about today with students, is how to be a good financial steward. And from that financial stewardship, they should become more prosperous and be able to hopefully give back to the community and to others based upon what they've learned coming out of this program and through you as teachers within the classroom. One other thing that drove this decision to do financial literacy was as I've aged, recognize that my childhood or upbringing when it comes to financial understanding is not the norm. When you're raised in a banking family, you pick up things around the dinner table that many other families are probably not discussing. And when I went off to college and ended up doing my MBA in finance, I was exposed to things that most people probably never think about or are aware of in their life. And at the time, I thought, it was summer of 2008 when I had this experience that I'm going to talk about. I thought, I'm pretty smart when it comes to finance. The bank's going in the right direction. We've pulled off a great turnaround in our business, and things were going well. And at the time, I enrolled in what's called Bond Math University, and it was in Chicago. And I went out to this 4-day course, I believe it was. And I came out of that realizing that I didn't know as much of that as I thought I knew. And on the flight home, I was just thinking, if there is that much more in the financial world that I have not been exposed to, given as much background as I have in it, I can't imagine somebody that is just in the general public that hasn't had finance and day-to-day living with a banker or in a bank family, how much are they missing? And so from there, that's why another reason we've started this financial institute is no matter what level you are at when it comes to financial knowledge, there is always something bigger and better that you can be learning. And what I realized was the things that I learned that summer in Chicago would not have been possible except that I had built a financial foundation, or I should say my parents and others had built a financial foundation within me that allowed me to go to that next level and grasp the more complex financial subjects and concepts that in hindsight have allowed the bank and others to profit in ways that we just weren't able to before that experience. So that's what we want to do at a certain level for students just in the general public in our communities, that give them that foundation within the high school and junior high and elementary experience, so that maybe by the time they go off to college they decide that they want to learn more in finance. Maybe some people don't want to learn anymore, but they'll at least have a foundation to come back to and make decisions in their life off of. When I say today, I maybe am talking 5 and 10 years ago, but I'll use the term today. Today's educational system is much the same as it was 100 years ago. And I'm not sure that that was what was intended 100 years ago when the Board of Education was established for the United States, but that's what has transpired. I will say that I'm encouraged with what I've seen in the last 5 to 10 years, that schools are starting to adapt to the world that we operate from a business standpoint. But prior to that, it was very, very much like it was in the early 1900s. And one of the reasons that is, in the 1900s, education was set up from more of a scholastic standpoint. And it was an agrarian society with a little industrial activity, but for the most part, you just needed your scholastic skills, reading, math, writing, and you could become successful in life. But as time has gone on, more business in the American society, and people can invest in the stock markets like they never could 100 years ago, and people are just bombarded with many, many more financial decisions and choices. And given that, education needs to adapt to address that going concern in the future. It's interesting, I've never had a loan officer ask one of our business clients for their report card from high school or college when we have to give them a loan. We ask for their balance sheet. We ask for their financials. That's what drives the world today. It's important to learn how to read and write and do math, because that's what builds and allows us to learn the financial skills in the future. But so many people are misguided and don't understand that it's the finance that drives the world today. In 1903, the Board of Education had a statement. They put out there, "The task we set before ourselves is simple. We will organize children and teach them to do in a perfect way the things their fathers and mothers are doing in an imperfect way." Today, One of those things that's imperfect by the mothers and fathers and many of us throughout the United States is financial literacy, financial management, and just basically the healthcare of our individual, our business, our municipalities, and our federal government's financials. This is why we've asked you to join us today to become more involved in the financial literacy movement and to make a bigger impact within your own school district. So why are you here today? I hope it's because you want to join with us to become a world changer. I had the privilege this year of sitting in a session at a conference titled Leading to Change Lives. And in that session, the presenter talked about the different attributes of a person that changes other people's lives. And he started out by demonstrating this with two sets of questions. The first set of questions were, name the Nobel Peace Prize winner in 2011. Name the Miss America winner in 2011. And also name the top 3 selling books of all time, non-religious. There was about 8 questions like this, and I got really good at drawing a straight line because I didn't know any of the answers. And afterwards he went through the answers, and only one person out of 150 people had one answer right. So the second set of questions he went into were examples like this. Name an influential teacher in your life. Name a friend who got you through a tough time. Name someone who taught you something that changed your life. Name a person who encourages you. What he was trying to demonstrate, obviously that second set of questions, everybody was able to answer. And just so you know, I had several teachers' names on that list. And that's hopefully something that we can demonstrate to you or help you understand today of why it's so important that you become involved in this financial literacy movement. What he was demonstrating was that the first set of answers or questions were people that were distant, it was surfacey, it really didn't have an impact on individual people's lives. But from a national or world standpoint, they were recognized for some great accomplishment. The bigger thing is that people like you in the classroom, like myself in the community as a business person, we can have a greater impact on the world, one person, one student at a time, because we're at the personal level. We make it a true impact in that person's life. It's not just something that's on a news clip at the end of the day and you soon forget about it. So as a person in the classroom, you can become a world changer, one student at a time. And the presenter also went on to list the 8 characteristics of a world changer. The first one is people who change the world are usually very unlikely. It's the unlikely person that ends up making a huge impact on the world. It's the people that are empowered. It's purposeful people, the people that have intention and are deliberate about what they do. In speaking about purpose in people's lives, he mentioned that there's 2 most important days in a person's life. The day that they were born and the day that they realize why they were born. And if you think about that for a second, I know a lot of people that still are trying to figure out what they want to do in life and why they're here. And you can tell a difference between them and people that know what their calling is in life and why they were put here on earth and what they're going to do about that. The fourth characteristic is people that take action, not just having ideas and concepts and theory, but people that actually get it done. Dissatisfied people, not people that are sitting there complaining, but people that aren't satisfied with the status quo. They're wanting to do something to improve and improve the area around them and the people around them. People that are motivated, people that are overcomers, and people that are committed. Those were the 8 characteristics that he listed for people that can change the world. We have the fortune of having a person like that. We have many people like that at the bank, but the one person that I want to talk about today is Bob Mantell, who's the director of our Financial Literacy Institute, the TS Bank Institute. He came along at just the right time, and I personally believe through conversations with him that he found his calling by doing this. He's a coach, had a desire to be a teacher. He gave up the corporate business life, gave up some income, gave up a lot of income to come do this. And in hindsight, I believe that he's very glad that he made that decision, and he sees how he's making a change in the world through this project. The great thing about Bob is he's a self-starter, he's motivated, he's basically all of those 8 characteristics that I mentioned earlier. And we're looking for other people like that. Hopefully we get to hire some of them. Hopefully some of them are you in the classroom that we get to work with as time goes on and as this institute spreads to more schools throughout Iowa. We also want to thank the teachers and administration at the Trainer School District for helping us launch out on this venture. And we also want to thank you for coming alongside us and helping us move this forward in the future. And basically, it's really not us moving it forward. It's allowing us to help you move it forward. It's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to be fun along the way. It'll be challenging. We've incurred that already, but it's a great cause. I just think about if it impacts at least one kid, which I know it already has, it will be worth the time and the effort and the money to do what we're doing. I also want to thank you for coming here today, taking your time to commit to this event. We got some great speakers, and they're going to help you rethink how we do things from a financial literacy standpoint and hopefully help you become more successful in the classroom. So I want to thank you, and I challenge you to leave here today and become one of those world changers. I know in the classroom you already are impacting students' lives, but begin to think about how you can do it from a financial literacy standpoint. So please join us in becoming a world changer. You can impact the future of America and its financial affairs one student at a time in your classroom. Thank you.